Hello everyone, he's André Lanus. I'm Technical Lead Evangelist at Embarcadero, and in this session I will talk about DataSnap mobile connectors. Let's start understanding what is the mobile connectors. Mobile connector is a framework that make easier for you to access the servers you have available on your DataSnap REST server. It means all of your server methods available on DataSnap server is going to be you are going to be able to call those server methods through HTTP call. Also, mobile connectors enable and make much easier the invocation, the way how you call these methods, because it provides you a proxy which is generated by the DataSnap server. It's available on Delphi XZ2 and C++ XZ2. It's going to work connected with your DataSnap server and will open and make much easier for other platforms to make calls on your server, on your DataSnap server. Developers always ask me, when should I use DataSnap connectors? Why should I use the DataSnap connectors? Let's thinking about the number of customers you have today and the information they manage. So your customers is always asking to access the information, and in most of the cases they are not sit behind a desk with a desktop machine or a laptop. So they are trying to use many other devices and many other ways to access the information, maybe through a web application, maybe through a tablet, to a mobile device. It means the diversity of devices and from where we can access the information is so big today, and the customers want to access that information from that many different ways. So with DataSnap mobile connectors, we enable and make much easier for you to integrate your application with other technologies that needs to interact with your business logics and take the information. Let's say, for example, you want to build an Android application and you want to build a native Android application in Java, and you don't have the expertise to do that. You can integrate it with, you can contract another developer, and this other developer will be able to access your business logics through the DataSnap mobile connectors, because the mobile connectors will generate the Java code required to access that information. Also, let's say you need to make an integration, your application needs to be integrated with some third party. So you can use the same concept in the mobile connectors to make easier for the other side to connect, and you pass all of the logics that is required for this other application to connect into your application. So in case you want to make yourself, you want to create the application in other platform, so it's going to minimize the learning curve you have to integrate your application with your other platforms. So let's say you want to learn another language, or you want to use another platform, and so all the communication part between the device, for example, and the server is going to be full generated by the mobile connector. So there's a lot of benefit on the DataSnap mobile connectors, and it supports a number of different platforms. You're going to see that mobile connector generating proxy code for Android using Java. For iOS, it could be generated in Object-C or through Pascal. In Windows Phone, it will generate in C#, but you can have your Windows Phone application built with Delphi Prisma and access the proxies in C#, which the proxy should need to be separated on a different assembler to make the interoperability between the languages work. Also, you can use the proxy for BlackBerry, and the code will be generated in Java. The communication between server and device will happen through HTTP or HTTPS protocol. It's 100% REST, and what is going to be sent between server and device, it's going to be JSON objects. So beyond the simple fact to generate the code, the mobile connectors, when generate the code, it's going to create abstraction of the JSON objects. So instead to work with array of JSON or JSON string, you will see, for example, DBX header mapping a JSON array, but instead to go through every single position of the JSON array, you're going to work with a simple DBX header, which is abstracting the whole JSON for you. When you talk about JSON, so all the methods, the proxy, they are sending JSON objects behind the scenes. And unfortunately, between if you, in case like you have a T customer object on the server side and you wanted the same representation of a T customer in Java or in C#, the marshalling and unmarshal doesn't happen, doesn't support that. You cannot marshal and unmarshal JSON object in different platforms. In this case, you're going to receive a value pair object on your client side. But if you want to map, like represent the T customer in Java, for example, you just need to have the T customer class representation in Java, and you're going to have to, based on reflection, for example, you're going to have to do that manually, create the representation of the T customer in Java. So it's a little trick here. Also, JSON is available on all devices that we support with mobile connectors. So you have full support and full standard. Everything you are going to do here is going to do in different platforms, going to be pretty much the same. Other questions are related with the server method implementation. So you're going to be implementing all of your code on the DataSnap server in Delphi or C++. So that's remained the same. There is no drastic change on this. So remember that all the calls you make to the server are stateless. So there is no session persistent unless you decide to implement that. But when you go and look all of the concepts behind REST, it's stateless concept. It's important to remember that mobile and desktop are different, and the requirements we have to create a mobile application are very different from desktop. So many people come and ask, oh, I want to have all of my server methods on DataSnap server available for mobile. So you don't necessarily need to have all of them, because a lot of things you're going to do in mobile is going to be specific. It's going to target some specific functionality of your system, some specific information. Things going to be architect, and the requirements for the mobile is going to be different. Be careful with that. Have this in mind and think about what kind of information you want to expose on the mobile device. And one more time, the interchange, the information, it's always through JSON format. So since we are using the DB Express framework integrated with the DataSnap mobile connectors, a lot of this JSON formats, JSON conversion is going to be abstracted. Also, when we related server methods and data, especially when you're talking with database and you want to retrieve the data from your server to the client side, a lot of questions comes related with the client dataset. Client dataset today is for desktop development. It's for native application built in Delphi and C++. We don't have the implementation of client dataset for Android, for iOS. We have that in mind. We have that in the roadmap, but at this point, client dataset, it's for desktop. So what's the alternative for the client dataset, or something that help me to interact through the data? In mobile, we use DBX Header, which is part of the DB Express framework. You're going to use DBX Header to query your data or to execute insert, deletes, updates. When you execute select, you're going to receive a cursor, which is the DBX header. And in this case, the DBX header is abstracting all of the JSON types for you. And another very important thing is the DBX header is unidirectional. It's different from the client dataset, which is bidirectional. And all of the changes you made, you have to generate a new SQL statement or execute a server method from the client side that's going to update the information on the server side. So the DBX framework is part of the DataSnap connectors. So a lot of things you do in the way you do with the Express framework is going to be the same way you do in the DataSnap connector. So things like how to manipulate the DBX header, how to interact, how to get the values from columns and things like that is going to behave and act in the same way on the mobile device. In order to start using the mobile connectors today, what you need to do. So first, you can use the DataSnap Server wizard if you are creating a new DataSnap server, and just enable the HTTP and the mobile connectors. These are two checkbox on the wizard. In case you already have a server, what you need to do is simple enable the HTTP protocol and drop some components on your DataSnap server. When you do that using the wizard, you have a new proxy dispatcher that's going to be added to your DataSnap server. And this proxy dispatcher is going to allow developers to access the web server through HTTP and download the proxy. So in case they want to, for example, you have DataSnap server running and I want to take the latest version of the proxy to access my DataSnap server, and I need the proxy for iOS using Object-C. So you can just use HTTP request and download the code. So when you create the project, you will see a proxy folder under your project folder, and this proxy has, for each platform, there is a folder which all of the static class required by the framework, and also there is dsprox dot the extension of the platform you're using, the language you're using, and dsprox contain all of the classes and methods that will allow you to make the remote call on your DataSnap server. So that's what you're gonna take. So how you generate the proxy? Two ways. You just, like I said, use the HTTP request, passing the host, the port /proxy, and the platform name .zip, and you can download your proxy. Or through the command line, use the Win32 proxy downloader that you can generate through the command line. There is a third option, which is the Win32 proxy downloader.jar. This is a Java version of the proxy downloader that you can use. You can use command line in other platforms that's not Windows. In case you want to use in case you generate the proxy, you are going to get, beyond the static class that I mentioned, the dsprox.java for Java, dsprox.cs for C#, and so on. So let's take a look in the proxy in Java, how it look like. So in case here it creates a class dsprox, and this class has a subclass that represent my server class on the server side. So it means I have a tserver method 1 on my server side. It creates a representation of tserver method 1 on the client side, which extend this basic class, and I can create this class. When I create this class, I have to pass the connection I'm going to use with the username, IP address, port, password, and so on. And under this class, you have a number of methods to interact with the metadata, plus the representation to call your method on the server side. So I have a method on the server side called echo string, which I pass a string value, and it throws a DBX exception. So in this case, what I have to do is just instantiate the class, call echo string, pass the string, and it will make the call on the server side for this method, passing the value the method is expecting. So we don't need to learn all of this code here, which is the code we are doing to execute that on the server side. It just call the method and that's it. Now that I show how the proxy look like, let's see how I interact with the proxy. So in this case, I have like another file, another class in Java. So the first step I need to do is create my REST connection. DS REST connection is one of the static class part of the mobile connectors. So I need to set this host, would be the name or the IP address, the port, and the protocol I'm going to use. In case your server require authentication, you can just add here the username and password using the set username and set password methods. So in this case, you see that the DSREST connection class encapsulate all the properties in methods required to connect to the server. So when you need to call the server method from the mobile application, what you do is pretty much this. So you instantiate the REST connection, create a new instance for your proxy class, passing the connection as a parameter the moment you create the server method, and then you just call the method passing the parameter and take the result. That's how it happened. That's it. Behind the scene, all of the HTTP requests, all this stuff has been handled by the framework. You didn't need to learn how it works. You just need to know that what the methods are available, what parameters you have to pass, and what you're going to receive. When you look at the big picture, what we are providing is this. We have our DataSnap server that could be Delphi or C++. We can test through the web interface that's generated automatically by the DataSnap server. We can test all of the server methods available. And DataSnap server will provide the proxy to the following platforms, to the following devices. It means all of my business logics will be centralized here, and I'm just going to work in an interfaces for Android, iOS, BlackBerry, and Windows Phone. So we have a company tweet example in the product that really shows how it works. It's an internal tweet that you see all the business logics here on the server and all of these mobile devices talking with each other through the DataSnap server. So that's pretty powerful, pretty open, and shows how you can integrate your application with other platforms, how you can extend your application to other platforms based on the DataSnap framework. Let me show you how you can create your DataSnap server and enable the mobile connectors, and also make calls from mobile applications. I have a pre-built DataSnap server, which I implemented some server methods. Let me show you what I implemented on the server methods here. So I have the server method unit, which is my server class here, and I have a DataSnap SQL connection, which I'm connecting through interface database. And I implemented here 3 new server methods. The 2 first methods here, echo string and reverse string, was generated as a sample method by the DataSnap wizard. So the first one is pretty simple. It's a sum method, which I just sum x and y and return the result of this calculation. And the other 2 methods is the get countries, which are return DDBX header. That's going to be a list of countries, which I'm going to query on the database, and I'm going to return as a DBX header. And the other method, which is insert country, I pass a country occurrence as the values to insert on my country table. And in case any error happen, I'm going to return the exception message into this parameter, and I'm going to return false. In case I execute successfully the insert, I'm going to return true, and the error message is going to be empty. So let's take a look at the implementation of get countries. It's pretty simple. I have, as I said, the SQL connection connect through interface database. I open the connection, create a command. In this command, I'm going to pass select stuff from country. I check if the query is prepared or not, and I execute the query. The return of the execute query method is going to be a DBX header. So in the case on the client side, I'm going to get, as I'm using REST interface, I'm going to get the DBX header as a JSON object. The insert count implementation, it's very similar. I create a command, but I'm executing here an insert statement. And in this case, I pass as parameter into the, not as parameter, but I pass the values, country occurrence into my string to execute it later. So I'm using here execute update, which is the appropriate method to execute insert statement. Okay. In case I have any error happening here, I'm going to pass the exception message to the error parameter here, as I said before. In case no problem happen, I'm going to return true as the result for this method here. So when we create this DataSnap server, we check to enable the web files web page. We did that because we want to test the server methods. You don't need to create a client application to test your server methods using REST interface. So we just come here on this page, server function, and every time we create a new method, this page is going to be updated. So this page is created dynamic. So I have the the 5 methods part of my tserver method 1 class. In this case, that's the basic one, the sum method, which I can pass the 2 parameters, and I get here the result, the parameters I pass, and the result in JSON format. So I can use the method getCountry, and the getCountry in this case is returning the list of countries I have in the table country in JSON format as well. And in this case, the insert country, let's say I want to pass here Brazil, and I need to say real is the currency in Brazil. So in this case, I'm execute. I get a true, no error message, and the values I pass. In case I try to execute again, I'm going to get a violation primary key because I already have Brazil on this table. So you don't need to create any kind of client application. You just need to execute the method you have, just implement the method you have, execute the server, and all of the page is going to be executed, is going to be updated automatically because this server here is using the proxy generator component, which updated the proxy class in JavaScript, and this proxy class is generated here in JavaScript, and every time we execute, you're going to see here the methods you create in your server. This is the basic stuff you need in your DataSnap server. Now let's see how we can enable the mobile applications to access to connect in our DataSnap server and execute the server methods we implemented. As I mentioned before, we already have here the proxy class here in this folder, which is the basic class required by the proxy we're going to generate it here. Since we compiled this application, and this application is compiled under the platform directory /debug, we have the proxy folder here under the debug directory. So our server, when we execute through the IDE, has been executed under the debug folder. So in this case, it automatically copied the proxy folder here as well. Let's take a look at my Android client application. And in order to create an Android application, you have to use Eclipse. So let's take a look here on my Eclipse application. To start your project, the Android project in Eclipse, you just need to create a new Android project application. So in this case, I already have my Android application here. And one important step when you create a project, you need to add in the Android manifest, you need to add permission for this application to access the internet. Since my application needs to connect with the DataSnap server, I need to add this kind of user permission through the internet here. So that's the basic stuff you need in our application. The second step is I need to generate the proxy classes in Java for Android and add into my project. In this case, I already generated here. So I have all of the basic class plus the client proxy here. So you can see that I have my methods reverse string. I also have the get counters here. All of these methods, the required implementation in Java to access these methods. How I create that? There are two ways. There are two ways you can create the proxy class dynamic. You can create ask request through the URL to your server. Just type HTTP, the name, import of your server, /prox, / the name of the platform you want to create. In this case, the name of the platform is the name of the directory you have here on the proxy. So in this case, you have all of the names here. So name.zip. But in this case, I'm going to generate through command line. So in this case, I can use the Win32 proxy downloader. I pass the parameter, the language I want to generate, where is my server, and where I want output generate in which folder I want to generate those classes. So in this case here, I just press enter, and my proxy class already was generated. In this case, it's asking to reload because I replaced with a new version of the proxy, and here is my proxy class. So you have to add manually this number of files generated by this package generated by the command line in your project. Otherwise, it will not add for you. So that's the two basic steps I need in my application. After that, I just make the designer of my application, which I have a country and currency. I have two added text, which represent the country and currency fields, parameters on my server method. And I'm going to click the insert method to execute the insert country server method. And I have this refresh button, which get the list of countries and populate here on a list view component control I have here in Android. So the implementation is very simple. That's the onCreate method for this, let's say this form, okay? I have to find the instance for each one of the controls I want to interact. And in this case, in the insert button, I implement the insert. I said at the moment I click on the insert button, I'm going to execute the insert method. And if I want to refresh, I'm going to execute the refresh method. And this is part of the button refresh. When you look, the two methods, let's start looking at the insert method. I have the DS REST connection, which is a type of object which is part of my REST, my proxy implementation here. When we get the DataSnap connector, we have here a specific REST object in one of this class here. In this case, I can look the DS REST connection here, .java, okay? And you can see that implementation of this class REST connection and how to make a REST call into your DataSnap server. So that's pretty much what we have here. I get this method get connection. Remember to set the hosting port for the server you're trying to connect. In this case, you cannot use localhost because this application is going to run into your device. Okay, you cannot use localhost here. You have to use the IP address for your server. I'm using port 8080. In case you enable username and password, you enable security in your server, you can set the username and password here as well. So the insert method, as you can see, has here the insert country, which I pass country and currency. Take a look that I don't get the error message as an output parameter here in Java. In this case, what the proxy generator did was instead to return true or false, he's gonna return type insert country returns. The insert country returns type has a return value which represent in this case the Boolean return value you can see here, and also it has the error message, which is the error message in case I have some exception on the server side. So in this case, when I have this, I print the error message here. So that's how works the implementation on the Java side for this kind of method, okay? And these 2 lines of code here is just to hide the keyboard I need to hide in this case. So the refresh method, which is going to execute the get country methods. As you can see here, I get the get connection again. I instantiate the server method, which is the server method class I have generated into my proxy. And I pass the get connection here. I declare a header as a TDBX header here. In this case, what is happening here is this number of classes I have part of the proxy is going to allow me to read all of the information in a DBX header format. I'm not going to parse a JSON array here, parse the columns, the values, all this stuff. It makes much easier, much simple. So I execute get countries. get the header, create a array list, which I'm going to call countries, and I'm interact here through the DBX header. In this case, for each country I have in this header, I'm adding on my array list, and I pass my array list to the list view. So when I look this application, and I run here, let me run this application into my Android simulator application. That's my DataSnap Android client application, and I can just go back here, take a look in the list of countries I have. I'm going to delete, in this case here, the last one, which was Brazil. Let's update. Go back here on my Android, and I click insert. So when I click insert, what happened here, I execute the server method and I get my Brazil record here on the table. So when I click the button refresh, I'm going to list all of the countries I have on this table, and as you can see here, Brazil is the last one. So that shows you how you can connect into DataSnap server from Android application and execute all of your server methods. Before I finish this presentation, I want to share with you some links. The first one, a YouTube video where I show how you can use DataSnap mobile connectors with Windows Phone and Prisma. Take a look. It's only 12 minutes, and you can have a pretty good idea how easily it is to work with Windows Phone as well. Also, my blog and the link to download the trial of Rad Studio. So here is my contact information. Feel free to contact me anytime through my blog, Twitter, or my email. It's going to be a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you very much, and see you on the next presentation.